Today on DNVR Buffs Live, we have Phillip Dukes of On3. We're going to ask him all about the Juju Lewis recruitment, Coach Prime's recruiting strategy, and some of the players that he's familiar with that are already on the team. Let's dive in. Let's go.
Welcome into DNVR Buffs Primetime, presented by Illegal Pete's, everyone's go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beers. Today we've got a great show. Phillip Dukes of On3 joining the show. We're going to talk Colorado recruiting, Julian Lewis, all kinds of stuff, man.
Cannot wait. Let's bring him in.
What is up, Dukes? How you doing, man? Thanks for joining.
Man, I'm good, man. Blessed, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
No problem, man.
Great to have you.
Yeah, we've had some On3 guys on before.
Yep. I will say one thing about On3, those guys always have the good equipment. Like the camera's clear, the mic is clear. I love it.
Yeah, they take care of us.
All right, Dukes. Well, we wanted to, kind of get your story, introduce you to our viewers here. So how did you end up at On3, and kind of what's your background with football?
Really, from College Park, Georgia. Grew up playing ball. Quit playing halfway through high school. Really, at the beginning of high school, I just kind of got into the street a little bit, and really, I just always had a passion for sports. Transferred a few different schools in Atlanta. When I finally found my foot in that Banneker High School in College Park, did really well in my senior year. Ended up being senior class president. Had the highest SAT score, which did not kind of correlate to my grades, which showed you kind of what I was doing. So got an opportunity to go to Auburn University, met a lot of cool people, ended up being a resident manager at the athletic dorm, met a lot of ball players. I was a guy from Atlanta. I was really big into fashion and parties. So I got pretty popular just by throwing parties at the local nightclub, which was kind of fun. So, guys would come in and, hey, Dukes, can you throw a party for some of the recruits? So that's how I kind of met a lot of the guys on the team. I parlayed those relationships, 20-year friends. So I had some buddies who were on Auburn's coaching staff, and we would just talk football. And then one day we just thought about it, and I was like, bro, what if I put some of this stuff out? You mind? And they was like, nah. So me not knowing, I was working at 24/7 at the time, and I used to always go on Auburn Undercover's website, and I just messaged one of the writers like, hey, man, I know all this stuff. Like, give me a job. And they was like, that's not how that works, Dukes. So I just go on the message board and I start putting out information. And, of course, they start clowning me like, who does this guy think he is? And he doesn't know. And so what I did was I just started tweeting it instead. And so I started in May 2020, zero followers. And what I would do was I would get some information. I would say, hey, expect 3 booms this weekend. And then 3 guys committed. And people were like, hey, this guy knows something. Maybe about a month later, I do it again. Hey, I think this guy's going to commit. It happens again. So as it continues to happen, I said, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let people know that I'm going to put out information and then turn my page private. And I said, if I get 200 retweets, I'll tell you who the next guy Auburn is getting. And it went crazy. And so I built up a quick following, maybe like 6,000-7,000 followers over the span of maybe 6 months, which is kind of good for grassroots and no help, So eventually 24/7 continued to see what I was doing. They was like, all right, Deuce, you clearly got sources. Come work for us on a part-time basis. And I was working a job at I was running a biohazardous waste facility as a general manager, which was cool, but it was like, bro, I worked in the office, but it still stank. Like, it was one of them jobs. So On3 saw an interview. So what I wanted to do, my true passion was like video work. So even though I was doing like the recruiting notes and all of that type of stuff using my sources, I would interview guys that I knew from Atlanta, and Atlanta just blew up football wise. So a lot of these guys, I also threw parties in Atlanta. So a lot of these recruits now, I know their parents, especially in the Atlanta area. So KJ Bolden was one who I had a good relationship with his family, who ended up committing. He's a safety doing really well at Georgia. Had a relationship with his family last year. He was probably one of the most popular recruits in the cycle. The week he committed, I got his only interview in person, one of the only ones he did the cycle, but the family gave it to me. It blew up. On3 saw it. All of the top guys in the industry were trying to get this interview, and they were like, how the heck did this guy get it? And On3 was like, we've seen enough. Come work for us. Quit your day job. We're going to make sure that you're straight. And so when I became a free agent, I knew I had a home already. Talked to 24/7. They was like, hey, you got our blessing. And shoot, that's how I ended up at On3.
That's awesome, man.
That's awesome, man. First of all, congratulations for the grind paying off. That's an awesome story.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's real.
So with On3, I mean, we've kind of gone back and forth. We had a few people on the show, but you've been waving the banner for Colorado. So why are you carrying the banner for Colorado for On3?
When I more so than carrying the banner for Colorado is carrying the banner for right. When I see people that just are kind of like they don't like Colorado because they don't like Deion Sanders. It is not fact-based. It's more so just if somebody gives me real stats and they say, hey, they were 4-8, they performed poorly in this area on third down. Deion, when it came to certain coaching situations, he didn't do this well. I'm all for it. Hey, you know what? Because you're speaking on stats. When it gets down to I don't like the way he walks, I don't like the way he talks, they think they're all that. They're stuck up. That type of deal. That's when I kind of stepped in and I was like, hey, why all the hate? And I think the first thing that I did that was Colorado based, I put out a video that said, why the hate? And I explained why people don't like Deion Sanders. And it was informative for me to kind of take a deep dive into why. And I looked at some of the reasons and I read a lot of the tweets and I saw that it was a personality based thing. And that's why I wanted to jump in and kind of let that be known to say, hey, there's a lot of Colorado hate out here. But with that Colorado hate, a lot of it is personal with a guy that you don't even know. So from that point, that's where I wanted to kind of draw the line and say, hey, football, if we're talking stats, we're talking situational awareness, things of that nature, I'm all for it. But when we're just saying, or even recruiting, if you don't agree with the way he recruits, you're open to that. But just by saying he doesn't need to be up there talking like that, and that's not the way you should do things, and that's not my kind of coach, that's why I drew the line, and that's why I stepped in the name of right.
I love that. And it's so true. And we talk on this show all the time about how I don't know if there's ever been a bigger gap between how people who don't like this team think they're going to do and how people who do like this team think they're going to do. And I think the reason why the people that are against it, are saying, oh, they're going to win 1, 2, 3 games is because it's personal. They have blinders on. And, I think it's, at least for me, I can speak for myself. I'm probably on the other side. I'm on the very optimistic side. I think this team can compete to win the Big 12 championship. But that chasm that's there and why it's so big is because I think people are bringing personal feelings rather than looking at the fact that they have a Shedeur Sanders and a Travis Hunter. And they've upgraded the offensive line and this, that, and the other thing. And it's one of the kind of underlying themes of this show is just, I can't believe they're saying this or saying that. And I think you're right. It comes down to just people making it personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you guys do a really good job of being objective and backing what you think up with statistics and reasons and looking at the roster and looking at the depth and seeing the additions and really highlighting them versus who left. And I think when you look at those type things, instead of just saying, we're going to win because I said so because I love Colorado, well, that's not really enough for me to get on that side of thinking that Colorado can be on the plus side, on the win side this year. But when you start to look at the additions that they've brought in, even on the coaching staff, some of the changes that they've made, and Deion Sanders being one more year acclimated to Power 5 football, I think there's a lot of reasons for optimism for the Colorado Buffaloes.
Love that, man. Let's just kind of go into the team real quick, and we'll get to the portal versus, freshman recruiting stuff. But with this team, one of the things that they're kind of using on their side is this coaching staff. It's near 130 years NFL experience. How much does that matter to these kids who are coming up, who are joining college football from the high school ranks, or guys in the portal who are looking for a new destination?
I think when you can talk to somebody who's done it before at that level, the destination. There's a lot of talk about NIL, but I think that what Colorado has done a really good job of is making it about NFL. And what's the main goal? And there's a saying that people overuse, which is keep the main thing the main thing. But I think by having that NFL experience, it's a lot easier to say, hey, look, I've coached your favorites. I've coached the best ever. You can get, if you want to get there, these are the things that they did. These are the things that I've seen. And more importantly, these are the things that I've seen in the best players that I also see in you. And I think that's probably the biggest portion of the NFL experience, is seeing how that NFL experience translates to a transfer portal guy or a high school recruit.
I always just boil it down to like the simplest way of thinking of it. If someone's dream was to work for On3 and they were going to go to a class that was going to teach them, and you and I were teaching a class, and Phillip Dukes is teaching a class, they're going to go to his class because he knows how to get to On3 and he knows the people there and he has the connection. And the same thing is reverse. If they wanted to work for DNVR, they would come to us, not him. You know, it's like, that's one of the things that I think Colorado's done a really good job at, is if you really want that NFL experience, if you want that, you know, coaching and the tips on how to get there, like, they're trying to lean into that as their brand.
Yeah, I think it's working. I think that when you see the off-season activities, they're being ran in a way that kind of reminds you of an NFL program. So I think by having that experience, being able to promote that and say, if you want to know how to do it, I've coached A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Who's your favorite player? I guarantee you I know somebody who has the experience that can tell me what they worked on and how can we use that in our program to help you get better to that level. And to take the when you think of what Colorado was able to put into the NFL last year, it's like, all right, that wasn't really our roster. Now you're going to see the NFL development that we're going to show and we're going to prove. And when you see that, now you have proof of concept of what we want to do, and it's NFL experience. It's a lot different when you're able to say, hey, I've been at the biggest show, I've been at the big time. This is what I see, and this is what I see in you. And I think it was a great job by Colorado and a great angle.
Love that. You know, obviously 4-8 last year didn't really go as planned, but as Coach Prime would say, the holes were apparent. Everyone knew that they needed, you know, offensive linemen, they needed defensive linemen, they needed to get just overall deeper on this team. As you talk to recruits, what is the difference in the feeling that you get about Colorado from these recruits from this year compared to last year?
I think that is the buzz around the NFL experience being there, and also understanding that Coach Prime was still in year one. It's just like being a freshman. You have to get acclimated to the landscape or to the ecosystem to be your best. And I think that as Coach Prime, even seeing Coach Prime taking accountability last year, saying, hey, these were things that I could have done differently. That's what recruits are hearing. And when they get to Colorado and they're saying, hey, in this particular situation, if we do this instead of this, we win that game. And I think they've been doing a really good job. When you look at the close games that they did have last year or the games that they should have won, they could have easily been a 7-win team last year. So when you think about those type deals and you think about how you're able to promote that, I think, and even seeing last year, having what the difference is, we saw last year, and like you said, the holes were apparent. So by being able, now you've addressed those holes. So it's a lot easier sell to say, hey, this was a 1-win team that turned into a 4-win team. And I always say, you can go to any university and say, hey, if I can guarantee you 3 wins better than what you had last year, I don't care what school it is. If they didn't go undefeated, they'll say, yeah, we'll take those 3. And so I think you still have to be fair about it when it comes to Colorado. And as recruits are involved or what we're speaking on with recruits, they have something to lean on. They saw the product last year. They also saw the sellout games. They also see the buzz. They see the hype that comes along with Colorado. Now, if you could put those type of high-level athletes in that program, it's almost like a powder keg for success as long as things go according to schedule.
And I love what you said about adding 3 wins. Like, I don't think people realize how much of an improvement that is. And like you said, you know, probably could have been 7, maybe even 8. And I think that goes to like what you were talking about earlier about, you know, the people who just don't like Coach Prime, who are saying like they won 4 games and they were acting like they were national champions and this, that, and the other. And it's like, if you ever thought Deion Sanders was going to walk into Colorado and be like, hey, look, you might struggle a little bit at first and it might not be that cool, but, later down the road, I think we have a good chance of it. Like, that's not how he rolls, He's going to come in and be like, hey, look, we're going to win. We're going to win now. Get on board. You better believe in it or else, get left behind. Like, that's how he does it. And it worked. They got the attention. They got the headlines. They got players who would have never considered Colorado to start thinking, man, that looks pretty cool. I would love to go there. So it's a far cry from where they were before they got Coach Prime. And I like what you said about just how far it's come even in just that 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely. Lil Wayne has a lyric that says confidence is a stain he can't wipe off. And that's how he lives his life. And I think Deion Sanders subscribes to that same thing. There's the confidence is not going to go anywhere. 4 win, 1 win, 2 win. He believes in himself. And I think that permeates the locker room. And now you'll see with the higher level of athlete that they've been adding, you're going to see that confidence exude on the football field. And now that you're able to protect the Shedeur, you have more players. Maybe you don't have to play Travis Hunter so much on both sides of the ball because the overall team depth is better. So now you are able to pick your spots with Travis. You're going to see a more productive team, in my opinion. And I just think it all boils down to confidence.
Love it, man. All right, Dukes, I want to ask you about Juju, but let's take a quick break before we do that. And shout out to our partners over at Vestibule. Vestibule is a cool new app, guys. You can invest in your favorite athlete's future. They've partnered with Denver Broncos outside linebacker Baron Browning, who's coming into a contract year. He partnered with Vestibule to kind of give back to the fans. If he breaks the bank this year in free agency or with the Broncos, and you invest in him with Vestibule, you can make money alongside him. As fans, we invest in trading cards, we invest in merch, all this kinds of stuff for these athletes. Now you can directly invest in their contract with Vestibule. Baron's IPO is live right now and shares are available for purchase, but they are limited. So go download the Vestibule app now and invest.
Also, shout out to our good friends over at Toyota. The best cars on the road, as far as I'm concerned. Had my Toyota long before they became a partner of ours, and I'll have my Toyota long after, even though I hope they're our partner forever. I've got the RAV4. I really want to get the 4Runner, but the features that it has, the safety of the car, the ride, everything is absolutely top notch. And I haven't even mentioned the customer service that they have at the Front Range Toyota stores. When I went down there, they knew DNVR. It was an awesome experience. They hooked it up. So make sure you visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you, including AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is a proud partner of CU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR.
All right, here with On3's Phillip Dukes. Dukes, let's talk about Juju, man. Let's get into it. You've kind of grown up in that or come up through that Auburn scene. So let's just start there. It does feel like this is a 2-horse race at this point between Auburn and CU. Do you see it the same way, or do you think USC is still in the fold?
I think USC is going to be in the fold as long as he's committed. I think we see him decommit. That's going to be one of those telltale signs. But I think as long as he's still committed, you gotta. If there wasn't any type of communication or there wasn't a pull that USC had, that's not the type of family. And I say family because he and his father, the entire family is involved in this recruitment. I think they're not the type of family that's just going to leave them hanging if there wasn't a real interest in USC. But as far as Auburn and Colorado go, I think they're right there. I think when you look at the official visits, the communication after the official visits, him spending his time at these places, he literally could have went to any school in the country and said, you don't turn down a Julian Lewis to say, hey, I want to come visit your school. He specifically and strategically picked these schools based on places that he would like to spend the next 3 to 4 years of his college career. So I think USC is still in it, but I think Colorado did a bang-up job on their official visit. I think Auburn did a good job as well, and there are a lot of things to consider. So if I had to say it right now, I would go USC first with the Colorado and Auburn tie, maybe even Colorado a little ahead of Auburn right now.
What do you see as kind of the pros and cons or the reason for, why each school is kind of playing a role in his recruitment?
I think when you look at the success that Lincoln Riley's had with quarterbacks, you got to consider that multiple number 1 picks, even his other quarterback last year that he originally recruited at Oklahoma, who ended up at South Carolina, Spencer Rattler, just had a bang-up camp with the Saints. He's a great identifier of quarterback talent. He's hit way more times than not. You even go back to the situation where the way he got Caleb Williams, he thought he had Brock Vandegrift. Brock Vandegrift goes to Georgia instead. Well, he just rebounds with Caleb Williams. So when you look at that offense and how it highlights the quarterback, and if you're a smart quarterback with an accurate arm, you're going to be successful in his offense. And he's also personable, especially when you're talking quarterback lingo. So I think Julian really enjoys talking to him. From what I understand, that's probably the best relationship when it comes to speaking on a consistent basis. Just maybe text or phone calls. That's who the relationship with Lincoln Riley is really strong. When it comes to Colorado, I just think everything that Colorado presents, as far as with Julian gets there, he's the guy. Having a proof of concept with Shedeur Sanders as far as how he'll be used is really big. Then also looking at the father-son dynamic with Deion and Shedeur versus TC and Julian, TC Lewis's father, they have a really tight bond, a really tight dynamic. They're always together, and I think seeing those type of roles where if Deion wasn't Colorado's coach, like he said, Deion said, I'm not a baby daddy, I'm a father. So he was always going to be involved with Shedeur the way that he is, even back to the time where he was before he got there. In high school, he was always around Shedeur. And I think seeing that role that Deion plays with Shedeur is really big for the Lewis family, and I think that's a huge draw. And just to look at the amount of love that Colorado gave him on the official visit, I think it's really hard to ignore an entire city that's for you. And I just think that it's really huge and it's playing a big role in his recruitment. And also looking at what Colorado was able to do on the offensive line in the transfer portal, if they're making a concerted effort to make sure that if the quarterback is the guy, we're going to keep him on his feet and he won't be running for his life. And I think that is also playing a major role. When it comes to Auburn, you look at the proximity to home is an easy trip to get on the road, not having to go all the way out to the West Coast. And you look at what Auburn, what I like the most about what Auburn does present is the young cachet of receivers they have. Last year, they signed arguably the best wide receiver class in high school. When you look at Cam Coleman, who's a monster. Perry Thompson came to school, and he just got there in May. It didn't go as an early entry, but as soon as he gets there, he shows up 6'3", 220 pounds. When you look at what they were able to sign, in the slot, you have one of the best athletes in the state of Alabama, and Malcolm Simmons. Then you top that off with a guy like Bryce Kane, who's almost impossible to touch in the phone booth. That's how shifty he is. When Julian gets there, he'll have 4 guys that'll be there for at least 2 years. And I think that as far as what you want for the future, they have the best cachet of receivers, and they've also done a good job recruiting high school offensive linemen this year too. So I think that's going to be a draw, and Hugh Freeze has been successful in getting the ball to his receivers, but I just don't think that he's had this caliber of quarterback. So being able to imagine Hugh Freeze with this caliber quarterback as far as throwing the ball and accuracy, there's a lot of things that look good about Auburn as well. So I think he has a lot of reasons to consider the 3 schools that he is, and I think it's going to be really interesting to see who he ends up with.
Dukes, you're from the Atlanta area. That's where you live now. When did Juju first get on your radar? And, how did that happen? How did Juju just, become this phenom quarterback out there?
I think early on, when Julian, when he started to pop up on the 7-on-7 circuit at an early age, one of my buddies, Parlay from the Franchise Boys, his son actually is the fastest kid in the country, Maurice Gleaton Jr., but he was his first coach, and he told anybody that he could, he said, bro, I got a kid that's insane. And his accuracy, his moxie, the way he handles himself, he's like, man, the kid is like 7, 8 years old, and he handles himself like a grown man. And so that kind of started it. And then when you start to, that's one of the reasons that I got involved, seeing when I think he was his first 7-on-7 coach, if I'm not mistaken. But then also looking at the Little League circuit in Atlanta, it's insane here. The programs like Julian, the program he was in, the Atlanta Ducks, I think they just put out, I don't know what the record is, but right now in that program, there are over 40 to 50 Division I players right now from the same program. So and he was the guy. Now we're talking about the Aaron Nolans of the world, Jelani Thurman, Terrence Love. You can just go down a list of guys who are playing meaningful football. One team, I think last year, had sent last year's team that came out of 24 class had 13 guys from a Little League team that are playing Division I. That's insane. And so by seeing Julian be probably the best quarterback of that whole program, and we're talking to KJ Bolden was in that program. Montrez Walker played in that program. Like this is the program in Atlanta. And so that's when I kind of caught on when they said, hey, the Ducks got one. And even as he played with different teams, what he was able to do as a true freshman at Carrollton, he's always been the guy. He goes to the state championship game against Caleb Downs and has throws over 300 yards. They ended up losing to a better team, but it wasn't because of Julian. He had a really good game as a freshman, playing in the largest classification in high school football in Georgia, which is a huge deal. So he's just always had that it factor about him, and him having the guidance of his father, he always moved like a businessman. Even you see him now, he's very measured on what he says. You don't hear about him getting in any trouble. He's a very pleasurable guy to be around. So I just think that Julian has had an aura about himself since he's been a Tyke, and ever since he's been on my radar, he's been the same guy. The only thing is he's just gotten bigger and better.
We talked for a while now about how we kind of think that Julian is the perfect fit to be the heir to the throne for Shedeur. But something you just said, I don't know if you caught it, but it stood out to me even more. And it's something I haven't heard before. But the idea of that when he was 7 or 8 years old, he was carrying himself like a grown man. When Shedeur's nickname since he was a kid from Coach Prime himself was Grown, because of the same exact thing. It's just like the parallels that exist there are just so perfect. I really hope we get to see that happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's underrated in this recruitment is there's already a blueprint for how to handle yourself as Colorado's quarterback from a quarterback that's very, very similar to him. And when I say similar, it's not just the on the field stuff, it's the off the field stuff, the cool demeanor, the moxie, the intangibles. Those are the things that aren't being as talked about as I think they should be, is that parallels that Colorado can provide to him based on what they've been able to provide to Shedeur Sanders. And I just think that's a very big pull, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he ends up in Colorado.
Did you see the other day when he had that great throw in the rivals camp, and it was up the sidelines, rail to the running back, and people are like, "Oh, you can make that throw in shorts, blah blah blah." And then he got on Twitter and found a clip from one of their games where he had that exact same throw for a touchdown, and he was like, "Make the throw in shorts or make the throw on ESPN." And I was like, another reason why he's perfect for Colorado. He's not afraid to clap back when people are talking out of turn.
I love it, man.
Now he has supreme confidence. You don't walk around and do the things that he's done. He's been able to do. He's not the biggest quarterback. He doesn't have just this cannon rocket of an arm. He's just one of the best quarterbacks, and he really exemplifies the word quarterback. When you think about arm sliding, throwing angles, being able to maneuver, moxie in the pocket, moving his feet, the footwork is really important, and then the technical aspect of it, of being able to shift his weight. He does everything the right way. He's like the prototype quarterback, in my opinion, as far as what you would want. And in the locker room, he's a good guy as well.
Dukes, with all that, and you mentioned, he kind of came on the scene in the 7-on-7 scene and lit it up immediately as a freshman at Carrollton as well. But he's reclassifying from the 26 class to the 25 class. And obviously, he's not a 6'5", 230-pound quarterback. He's around 6'1", 190. But when you add all that up, are there any concerns from you, just from what you know about him, kind of reclassifying and being an even younger player coming in as a true freshman?
No, not at all. He always was able to play with older guys. He was able to command respect playing with older guys. I never had to worry. I thought he was going to do it sooner, actually. Like, I always thought like Julian was ahead of his time. And you could even see even when he reclassed, he's still a 5-star. Like, he really could be a junior in high school, and he reclasses and becomes a 5-star in this class. That's really, really hard to do. And I think, but if anybody was prepared to do that, it was Julian Lewis. And then when you think about as far as the physicality part of it, the way he plays, he doesn't take a lot of big hits. He has like a sixth sense about when to get down, when to move. It almost reminds me of how Warwick Dunn was always able to kind of skirt that big hit. Even though he wasn't the biggest guy, he knew how to get hit, and I think Julian has that same skill.
Yeah, I said Kyler Murray too in that regard of just knowing how to not, get knocked around when you're that small.
Right, absolutely.
And he's a little bigger too.
Yeah, he's not their size. We've seen, USC's obviously had some decommitments lately, and Colorado had a massive weekend of recruits when Julian came to town last weekend. Wherever Julian decides to go to school, do you project or foresee like a wave of commitments following him? Like, is he the type of guy that'll get a group of people to come and play with him?
Yeah, absolutely. I think people, when they see that, if that does happen, you're going to see more people go ahead and close the deal with Colorado. One, because now you have your leader, and that's a question for guys. They want to say, okay, well, if you don't get Julian, who's the quarterback? Shedeur won't be there. He's 1,000% going to the league. So at this point, you want to know who the captain of the ship is going to be. If you get Julian Lewis, there's not a lot of captains that you'd rather have to lead you in the battle than Julian Lewis. So I 1,000% think that it's going to create a boon in recruiting. And a lot of guys who've been considering Colorado kind of look. And it's going to be guys who are committed to other schools that kind of look around and say, oh, man, it's going to be guys who haven't even taken an official to Colorado that are going to say, sheesh, they got Juju. I'm looking at the pieces, the offensive line. And you're going to see that staff. If they land Juju, you're going to see that staff turn their attention to another 5-star. You could almost book it. And you've seen with Colorado, you guys know better than me. When they put a guy on their radar, this staff, even when they were at Jackson State, when it's a guy on their radar, they all go and they make sure that they close on that guy. And there's usually one of these top tier guys. This class right now is Julian Lewis. But once he commits, they're going to keep their focus on him as well to make sure he stays committed if he commits. But they're going to go ahead and I wholeheartedly believe that he won't be the only highly rated guy that signs in this class.
Love that.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll kind of dig into this year's team and the roster with Phillip Dukes here. Shout out to our friends over at Coors Light. It's time to chill. It's what the summertime's made for, chilling, right? Go to Coors Field, have a few beers there. That's probably the most fun you're going to have there anyways, because we know the product on the field isn't great.
Did you see my Coors Light rankings that I put out last week?
Oh, yes. Please share them on the show.
So, number one, best Coors Light right now for me, country concert Coors Light.
Okay.
Number two, dive bar Coors Light. There's something about just going into a place, low light, ordering a Coors Light, drinking it down. Number three, oh gosh, I'm starting to blank on my own list here. Oh, golf course.
Of course.
That one is, self-explanatory. Number four, I think I said, oh yeah, there it is. I got the list. Number four is first Coors Light on a patio on a Friday afternoon after work.
Absolutely.
And then number five, of course, was the Coors Field Coors Light.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Come down to the DNVR bar, hang out with us. Once EA CFB 25 comes out, we'll be having some tournaments and stuff going on here. Get a few Coors Lights and hang out with us. Make the most out of times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. You can get it delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Also, those are just the summer rankings. Of course, in the fall, tailgate
Totally
Coors
different.
Light goes
Yes.
to number one.
Yes.
Also, shout out to our friends over at Bet365 who have been sending me a lot of money lately. Almost sent me a lot more this weekend.
Tragic.
If only Akshay Bhatia could have not had his only 3-putt of the week on the 72nd hole of the tournament. But hey, that's, let's not cry over.
It's a story for another day.
Exactly. Anyways, we love Bet365. They've got so many great options for you as a bettor. And right now, use the code DNVR365 when you sign up to get in on their bet and get offer. That's bet $5 or more and get $150 in bonus bets. It's a great deal, great way. You can start, sprinkling my golf picks, which have I hit 1 out of the last 3. Should have been 2 out of the last 3. Yeah. The other guy was top 5. We're kind of hot right now. Yep. So, I'll start sending those into you guys on Wednesdays. But either way, you must be 21 plus and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, back with Phillip Dukes of On3. Dukes, I wanted to ask you about, you interviewed Colton Hood, who was at Auburn. He's now at Colorado. Just what type of player is he? Demeanor, play style, all that. What can you tell us about him?
He's a dog. He's a guy who's been underrated for a long time, but he never wavered in his confidence. He was a guy that grew up playing a lot of baseball, so his ranking reflected the fact that he didn't go to a lot of camps in the springs. He was always playing baseball. He's definitely a college level baseball player for sure. And I just think that being underrated put that chip on his shoulder. He was one of the less ballyhooed guys who came into Auburn's class, one of the last guys in that class. But when he got to school, he was just focused on winning. He said, I know who I am, and a ranking site or anybody can't tell me who I am. I feel like I'm one of the better corners in this class, and I'm going to prove it. And he showed that this spring, took a massive jump. He was one of Auburn's top 3 corners, and as you know, in this level of football, that means you're a starter. Mm-hmm. So that was a big blow to Auburn. But I just think the family aspect, which says a lot about him. His spot was secured. He was good, but knowing that his little brother, had the opportunity to come to Colorado, and also his cousin Trent had the opportunity to come to Colorado, it just made all the sense in the world. But you guys are getting a dog, and I think, and he also has the pedigree. When you look at the amount of football that he has in his family, cousins, when you look at his cousins, his older brother, you look at his pops, you look at his uncle who played 8 years in the league, Roderick Hood, had a really good career, who also played at Auburn, a 4.3 40 guy. He has the pedigree for sports, not even just in his generation, but in previous generations. So you're looking at a true football player through and through.
You mentioned that family aspect, and it's something that obviously Coach Prime has made a huge point of, not just with his own family, but I think there's a total of 6 sets of brothers on this team. I'm just curious how you think that, is received when a parent is looking, where they want to put their kids and they see this family atmosphere that Coach Prime's created at Colorado.
If you're a family-oriented player, you got to love it. And especially the moms, when you're thinking about, where am I going to drop my 18-year-old off? Where there's no more familiarity than you can have on a football team than with the actual sibling. Cousins and friends is fine, but there's nothing like growing up with somebody who you saw like every day of your life. So thinking about that aspect, and when you think about culture and you think about locker room and you think about when these guys aren't playing ball, does he have people that are for him around? And when you think about having family and brothers and creating like small families that become larger ones, you've got, so right now we just talked about 6 families. Then that kind of permeates the entire locker room, where, hey, my brother is this. So you could be friend with one brother and another guy's a friend with another brother. And so now you've got 3 people with a degree of separation that is actual blood. I think that's huge, and you really can't undermine that or understate how big that is when it comes to recruiting, especially when you look at the type of guys that Colorado is recruiting. They're not just recruiting everybody based on what your ranking is and how good you are. They're recruiting guys who fit their program, who want to come in, want to work hard, and that are willing to buy into the culture. So I think having that family aspect only pushes that notion and that narrative forward.
Love it, man. Kam Mikell. I know you guys On3 just blew him up. It was a big recruitment and all that. He ends up picking Colorado. What can you tell us about him, his upbringing, and what kind of player he is?
Yeah, Kam is from a little further south in Atlanta, Statesboro. That's where Georgia Southern is. But he was a guy who started out underrated, but his athletic traits always just popped off. He's one of the guys that you saw with good hands. If he had the ball in his hand, something always good happened. Played multiple positions. And then when you saw him on defense, I measure a defensive player by what happens when you get there. Not is like when you get there, somebody going backwards. He's exploding from the hips. And Kam Mikell is a guy who was able to get pushed and get explosion naturally. He always seemed like he wasn't running hard, but you could tell that he was running fast. And that's one of those things that I look at when I see Kam Mikell. I said, when they had him listed as athlete, he was a true athlete. He could have been listed as safety, linebacker, quarterback, receiver, anywhere, because he had those type of traits. So when you think about a guy like who's coming from one of the more like not a metropolitan area, somewhere like in Georgia where they really love their football, I just think that Kam Mikell is a perfect fit for Colorado. And he was a highly rated guy. It's not like he's just, there were people that wanted Kam Mikell, like Georgia would have took. Like there was a lot of teams, big teams that wanted Kam Mikell. And that was a huge win for the Buffaloes.
Where do you think he plays?
Wherever you want to. I mean, I think he's going to have that conversation, and they're going to say, what do you want to do? I would venture to say I think he would be really good on defense, but I've seen him with the ball in his hand. He does have long speed, so I think it's going to be up to what the need, like they say, NOTB needs to the business, like what the team needs. I think that's where he'll be able to fill in, and he has that type of athleticism that if you see an injury on one side of the ball, he'll be able to fill in his particular position on the other side.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going to start him on offense this year, but with the idea of potentially him, adding to that package as he goes on. So it's going to be exciting to see. And then obviously he can make an impact in the return game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when he gets the ball in his hand, he's electric. And if you guys like go back and check him out on defense, man, like he's a baller.
Love it. You talked to Coach Flea, and he told the story about, recruiting Micah. And I actually talked to Micah's high school coach, and it was literally the exact same story that Coach Flea shared on your show. What can you tell us about Micah, what you knew about him, his upbringing, and the kind of player he'll be at Colorado?
Hard worker, man, lunch pail type of guy, not into all of the frills and the clout, so to speak. He's just a guy that loves football, wants to play football, and want to be somewhere where they were going to push him to be his best without all the frills that go along with recruiting. And I think that Coach Flea was the perfect guy, a hard worker, undersized guy who made the most out of his ability. And I think that when you get guys like that who are able to go get a Michael Welch, who's filled out pretty well, he could take a pounding, he can deliver a pounding as well. When you get guys like that who have that synergy as far as hard work goes, it becomes a beautiful relationship. And I look forward to see what he's going to do this year with the type of carries that I think he'll be getting.
Yeah, and I love that Coach Prime is able to land a kid like that, because I think there's this idea out there that, oh, if you go to Colorado, all you care about is clicks, or all you care about is NIL or whatever. Like, the opposite couldn't be more true of Michael Welch. And so I think it's big not just to bring him in here, but I think he's going to eventually have success. And I think that's going to be a big thing where it's like, look, it's at its core, what they're doing here is about football. All of the other stuff is just a way of helping you elevate your profile to get to the next level, to, you know, benefit from the things that you can now benefit from with NIL. But it doesn't mean that you have to come here thinking that that football isn't number one, because as we know from Coach Prime, like, football is number one. The rest of the stuff is just a benefit of you know, having him around.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
Dukes, when you look at this roster and, you know, look at how Coach Prime has built it the last 2 years, pretty transfer portal heavy, and especially in the 24 recruiting class, I think, what was it, like 7 actual recruits that signed on signing day? I think it's 10 total that they brought in. When you look at that and you look at that strategy in the Big 12 this year, how competitive do you think that will be this year? And then long-term wise, when it comes to recruiting, you know, is the portal going to be kind of a more, I guess, valid strategy for long-term roster building?
Yeah, I think when you look at teams that need a lot of help, you need documented production. You can't really afford to sit and wait and gamble on traits that you see in high school film. You need to see guys who, like we say, like to recruit guys with a mustache, guys who've already been through it already, who understand the nuances of being a college football player, who aren't going to be getting the meetings late because they know what comes to that, who are coming in ready to work and looking for an opportunity. I think that's really big in the type of program that Coach Prime is building, because you need guys who can come in and help you today. We don't have time to wait. We are one season away from one win. That's a huge red flag when it comes to being competitive in football. Like, these guys only won one game. And so when you look at the roster transformation and bringing in guys who have experience winning, experience with college football, like, that's really important, and raising the level of play immediately. I always look back at what Tommy Tuberville did at Auburn and how heavily he used to use the JUCO ranks in order to build his team out. And you saw that mix of JUCO was able to kind of build the entire level of the team, where you were able to get guys who were older, who could mentor guys. That's one of the things that people don't talk about, is having older guys on the team that can mentor some of the younger guys. That was able to help build that culture, which culminated in the peak of Auburn arguably being the best team in the country in 2004. So I think that same type of mentality is what Coach Prime has, is saying, we're going to bring in guys who are used to college football. We don't have a lot of time to develop as much as we will want to, based on the fact of where the roster is. As you see that roster start to level out, I think you'll start to see more high school recruiting. But at this time, it's imperative to bring in guys who have documented production, or if they don't have the production, already have been through a college program and are going to come in ready to go to work because their feet are already wet.
I've never heard the recruit guys with a mustache before.
That was great, bro.
But we're laughing because a couple weeks ago we both shaved our beards down to mustaches, and then had Charlie Offerdahl, who has the best mustache on the Buffs over here. So if you were wondering why we were snickering over here, it's been a theme of the show.
It has. Dukes, I'll let you go on this one. When you look at this roster for Colorado, and then you look at the conference as a whole, the Big 12, where do you see them competing, and do you think they could compete for a Big 12 title this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at the roster and we can start at star power. There's no other team in the Big 12 that has the amount of star power that the Buffs do. All right, so once you go from there, like when you look at the amount of first-round picks that they'll have this year, there's 2 that you only have to think about. We're talking top 5, top 10 type guys. And when you have one of those being a quarterback, you always put yourself in a position to be successful. And then when you start to look at the rest of the roster, the production they've been able to bring in, you look at a guy, I particularly look at defense. They were able to add an impact player or a starter from somewhere else in each level of the defense. You look at Deion Hayes coming out of Pitt. He was a guy who had a ton of production, had a bunch of tackles for loss, and he was really close on a lot of those sacks that he just wasn't able to finish on. If he can get with a guy like Warren Sapp who could look at that film and say, hey, you had 4 sacks last year, but it could have been 8 if you did this, then you're looking at a different type of player. Then you go to the next level, Nakai Greenhill, who was a really productive guy coming out of Charlotte. A lot of teams wanted him. He's a grown man. Every coach that I talked to that was recruiting him in that recruitment out of the transfer portal loved the way he went about his business. He was a high school teammate of Pop Dumas, who was at Georgia, had a ton of tackles, transferred to Kentucky. He has the pedigree of being a great football player. He was also at Michigan. So when you think about just needing an opportunity, he's the other type guy that can really help you. And we've already talked about Colton Hood. Now you have another viable starter in the secondary that even if he's your third guy, now you have a third guy that would have been a third guy anywhere, and a top 2 guy in a lot of places. And a lot of people in Auburn thought he should have started. I mean, should have been one of the perimeter guys. So I just think that what you're able to add allows you to have enough of a roster to compete at the top of the conference when you look at teams where a lot of people are looking at UCF to make a jump. Well, UCF was just playing in the Atlantic, All-American Conference, AAC, I believe, a couple of years ago. So they had to do a lot of roster transitioning as well when you look at the Big 12. So a lot of these teams in the Big 12 had to flip their rosters. And then also you got teams like Oklahoma State who had a really prolific offense that'll be good again. But I don't see the talent gap in the Big 12 with this roster that I saw in the Pac-12 or last year with that roster.
Love it, man.
Yep, great.
We'll let you go here then, man. Appreciate it. Let us know where we can find you on YouTube and where we can follow you.
Yeah, check me out on YouTube on the 5-Star Flex. If you just put that in On3 Recruits, I'm on the On3 Recruiting channel. Got some really good, fun content coming out. I try to keep it fun, try to keep it objective. And then check me out on my social media, X/Twitter at Dukes D-Scoop, DUKES THESCOOP. And that's the same thing on Instagram at Dukes D-Scoop.
All righty.
All right, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dukes. We'll do this again, brother.
Man, can't wait, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. And there he goes, Phillip Dukes of On3.
Great stuff, man.
Yeah, that was awesome. Huh?
Yeah, love the energy. Love what he said off the top, just about it's not about carrying the banner for Colorado. It's about carrying the banner for what's right.
Yep, I love it.
That was a banger. A few things that really stuck out to me. I mean, the grown thing with Juju.
Yep.
It's a new one. There's been so many things I've pointed to, been like, that makes it line up perfectly. That makes it line up. But like, you just have to think that Coach Prime is talking to TC Lewis and just saying like,
I've been there.
I've been in your shoes.
Yeah.
My son was so much like your son. And I'm about to take him from freshman starter to number 1 overall pick. That's what I want to do with Juju. And the parallels between those two guys, and they're each their own person and they have their differences, but to just be able to point to it and be like, look, I've stood in your shoes. I mean, Coach Prime always talks about how he's been in all the shoes. This one is like, really, I've been right there with top recruit quarterback. I know what it takes to develop him into what, being the best he can be.
Bless you.
Sorry. It's just these parallels and the way that it lines up are just too perfect.
Yeah, and it's another thing with that too, and a lot of people like to use it to hate on Colorado, but Coach Prime, he takes all his players and they're his kids, right?
Yep.
And they joke a lot about it with Travis because he's really brought him under his wing because of kind of these same things where it's like, I've been there. I was the dynamic athlete coming out. I was the dynamic athlete in college, and I knew what it took to get to that upper echelon, elite Hall of Fame level in the NFL. With Juju, you can kind of say the same thing. Like, look, my own son went through this. Bring him here, and he will become one of my sons again. And I can go through this entire process that I just went through with my son Shador, and I could do it again with Juju.
Do you think that Coach Prime and Juju would do the 100-yard walk before the game.
This has been ever since, we've kind of been looking at successors for Shedeur and all that. I've been wondering if it's going to continue. I think it will.
I think if it was Juju, it would.
Yes.
100%. And that just kind of shows how much of a great fit this will be. What else stood out to you about what our guy Dukes had to say?
Just talking about the guys from Georgia, Michael Welsh, Kam Mikell, those guys, and Colton Hood especially too. Just we heard about Colton Hood and how he was balling out at Auburn for the spring game and all this, and we've seen some clips from well off, and it's like, ooh, like this looks really nice here. Like what type of player are we getting? But he just reinforced the fact to me that when Colorado goes into the South, into Georgia especially in this case, and they go and find these kids, they are getting dogs every single time.
Yep.
So.
And that was the first thing he said, and I love to hear that. Do you think we're underestimating Colton Hood a little bit, just in terms of he wasn't on our projected starters? If we were going to do an updated guys who don't get talked about enough list, I think he would probably be on there.
Yeah, I think so too. The chat's probably throwing Brandon Hood in the chat right now already. Anyways, yes, we know. But he's a guy who. You mentioned, Dukes kind of mentioned it, not really highly recruited. And when you go look at his page and stuff, it's like, yeah, he has 3-star pedigree, all this stuff. But when you watched him just on those few well-off clips, man, very, very smooth, especially like feet and hips wise. Like the way he's able to get off the line of scrimmage, I think you can kind of cover anyone with that. And that's why he's so versatile out of the slot and why he would have been the third slot or the third cornerback at Auburn this year is because of those things. So, are we sleeping on him? Do I dare say we're sleeping on someone?
I don't want to take anything away from this roster or the Big 12 conference, but if the guy was going to be on the field on damn near an every down basis at Auburn, I think we might be. I think we maybe aren't talking enough about him contributing. And maybe it's as simple as if Travis isn't on the field, then, he's one of those guys. But it could be he's taking a starting spot from someone. DJ McKinney, a guy who we really like, a guy who Coach Prime has told to his face he has first-round potential. Yep. But potential has to be realized. And I think you saw flashes from him last year for sure at Oklahoma State. But maybe we should be talking about Colton Hood at that position. Regardless, it's a great problem to have for Colorado if you have 4 starting caliber corners.
Yeah, definitely, man. And then, going into Travis, and this is something too, when he was talking about Kam, it kind of goes back to when we were talking about Juju and is how it's like he has all these parallels to Shedeur and all that. The way he talked about Kam kind of reminded me of Travis. And especially, after this year, Travis is gone. I think we all know that he's going to leave for the NFL. So that's going to be one of the things that this team needs to find, not necessarily a 1-for-1 replacement for, but these are big roles on offense and defense you're going to have to fill. And I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to put this on Kam that he can do both, but he's got the ability to kind of do both if he wants to do that. And whether it is playing both offense and defense or just offense, like this is one player who I think for the future is going to help plug those holes for Colorado.
Man, I got really excited when he was talking about him, and that idea of effortless speed is such a characteristic of special players.
Yes.
Effortless anything. If you ever see someone talk about a quarterback and say, oh, he has effortless arm strength.
Right.
If you're, it could be anything. A shooter, he's got an effortless stroke. Like whatever it is, those are the guys who are so good at it and so smooth and so clean that it doesn't look like they have to try that hard. For example, like Darren Sproles, everything he did, like he looked like he was really working for it, right. And obviously being of shorter stature kind of makes it look that way. But when you think about Travis, I think is a perfect example of someone who no one ever really talks about Travis as like a burner from a speed perspective. I think it's because the way he runs, he just kind of glides. Yeah. And you don't realize that he's getting to spots way faster than someone who looks like they're trying way harder to get there.
Right.
So, you almost forget, because we've had so many offensive conversations about Kam, that he absolutely could play on both sides of the ball, and he has that level of athleticism. And, even down to him saying Georgia was interested in him, brings you back to Travis. So it's exciting.
And then one more thing about Juju that he talked about, and it's why I asked him this, because it was a topic that was brought up last week, was, are there any concerns, about Juju's size and about the reclassification? And when Dukes is just talking about how immediately from when he was 7, 8 years old, all the way up to being a freshman at Carrollton, like the guy just always looks like he belongs. And I think a lot of it has to do with what we've been talking about with his on-field or off-field ability, where it's that maturity, that calmness, that poise, but also he's got the ability to do it. So, I mean, it's tough to say with a true freshman at college because it is a big step, but there's going to be some speed bumps no matter where he goes. But it sounds like this is a kid that's just going to be able to play like wherever he lands.
Absolutely. And, it goes back to us, and I don't even think Juju is quite at this level yet, but it was the conversation we had about Shedeur when he was transferring to Colorado. And it was like this idea of, can he play at the Pac-12 level? And you and I turned on the tape, and I remember, it was kind of like our homework. We came back the next day, and both of us just said, like, this man puts the ball wherever he wants to. That doesn't matter if it's, some corner at Florida A&M. Doesn't matter if it's a corner at USC. It doesn't matter if it's a corner at Oklahoma State. It doesn't matter if it's prime Deion Sanders. If you put the ball exactly where you want to put it and it gets there, you're going to be fine. Whoever you're going against. And I'm pretty close to that level with Juju. I think he just has to get a little bit bigger, a little more mature.
Right.
But you see the way that he controls the football, he's going to have success. Then you add in this concern about his body. And I think that's something that it obviously sometimes rears its head, right?
Yeah.
Some of these players end up getting hurt. But Lamar Jackson is another guy who everyone always says, like, his frame. He's able to spend, 2 MVP seasons being completely healthy. You talk about Kyler Murray. Has he gotten banged up? Yes. But 9 times out of 10, he's able to avoid the hit. And I think the injury that he had was non-contact anyway. So it's like these guys grow up knowing that everyone else on the field is bigger than them. They've got to figure out a way to avoid getting hit by those people. I think he'll be fine. That, like you said, there'll be a learning curve. But I just keep thinking back to Shedeur Sanders walking on the field as a true freshman at Jackson State and going undefeated in conference. And I'm just like, that's got to be an intriguing thing to hear if you're Julian Lewis. Like, hey, look, not only from Shedeur, I've been there, done that, I'll walk you through it, but also from Coach Prime, like, I have no fear putting a true freshman quarterback at that. I did that with my own son when he wasn't. Everyone was wondering if he was physically ready for this level. He went out there and balled out.
So kind of the same thing with that, and this is what I've been thinking, just as, we go through this this Juju stuff, especially this most recent stuff where, we're wondering about his size and reclassification and all that, but the transformation that Shedeur has shown is a lot of it's attributed to Coach Mo. And what he's done, and you've seen it across many players in this strength and conditioning program, how they've bulked up, they've gotten faster, they've gotten stronger, they've just become better athletes, really, because of what Coach Mo has been able to do. Shedeur entered Jackson State as a true freshman, 6'1", 198, so he's slightly bigger, I guess.
What is Juju listed at, 6'1", 190?
I think so, but you got to remember, Juju is a year younger, too.
Yeah.
So he's got that 6'1", 185. So it's around the same area. Shedeur maybe has 10 pounds or so on him at this point. But again,
did Shedeur grow a little bit too? Vertically? So did Shedeur grow a little bit vertically?
I think he's listed at least at 6'2" on the roster. But that's something I think that's just forgotten about when it comes to high school recruiting stuff. These are literal high schoolers. These are young kids who are going to grow and get bigger over the next 3, 4, 5 years of their college football career.
Totally. And you just have to know that Coach Mo is going to transform these guys. And the track record is literally perfect. Especially for the guys who are about it. Travis comes in and he wants to transform his body, and man, they basically did it in a matter of months.
Right.
Now he's obviously grown even bigger and stronger. Now he doesn't even look like a slight framed player anymore.
Not at all.
Shedeur, Jordan Seaton, matter of months before he transformed. And so you love having Coach Mo on your side for that exact reason.
It's exciting stuff, man. That was great, though. Shout out to Dukes for coming on the show. We'll have him on in the future. Today is Wednesday, technically.
So happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July to everyone.
To everyone. Enjoy your weekend. I hope you have several Coors Lights, some smoked meat of sorts, maybe a boat, some fireworks.
Let's go, yeah.
The essentials.
What are your 4th of July like must-haves?
Adult beverages.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, that's 1A for sure. For me, 1B, definitely meat on the smoker.
Oh, yeah.
Has to be.
Yeah, I mean, those two are copy and paste for me. And then I also like to get a little, like, friendly competition, yard games
Yes,
for me.
little cornhole.
Yep, exactly. I've sadly kind of, like, grown past fireworks.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need fireworks to have a good 4th of July anymore.
Are you the old man now where it's like 10:30? Why are those damn kids?
No, not at all. But I am just like, if the question is like, should we drive into town to go see the fireworks show or just keep hanging out here?
Right.
It's keep hanging out here for me.
Definitely. So we hope you guys have a safe and fun 4th of July. We'll be back on Friday. Uncle Neely's on the show.
Hell yeah.
Finally back. See you guys then. Let's go Buffs.
Let's go Buffs.
We all silly like the mayor.